Join us for some scary ghost stories and tales of glories from Christmases long, long ago. That's right. Today, Sophia and I are reviving the old holiday tradition of telling ghost stories. From personal ghost encounters to famous ones you have all heard of, join us in our morbid time machine and let's get into it.
Welcome, inquirers, new and old. Have you ever wanted to go down a rabbit hole of morbid history, but you don't know where to start?
Then you are in the right place. Our Grand Pass is a podcast where each week we explore messed up history.
From shipwrecks and spooky places to morally questionable people and practices, we're Sophia
and Maia.
Join us in our morbid time machine
and let's discuss history's most fucked up.
Hey, Maia.
Hi, Sophia.
How are you this lovely day?
I am good. I have recovered from being sick, which is wonderful. So I'm feeling much better than last time.
That's good. That is good.
Yes. How are you, Sophia?
Pretty good. Getting ramped up to go on a trip.
Yeah, where are you going?
We are going to Tennessee.
Ooh, fun. What you doing there?
Family Christmas trip, post-Christmas trip.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, my sister and I had a very thorough discussion of if we hear anything in Appalachia. No, we didn't.
Yeah.
Because there's no way we're gonna get got by some cryptids. Like, respect my dudes. Not making fun of you. Just, we'll leave you alone. You leave us alone.
Yeah, Appalachian stories are cool.
I know. They're also, like, very spooky. And, like, we're gonna be in the Smokies. So it's like, alrighty. Like, I'm super excited because, like, the Smokies are gorgeous. But it's also like, if we hear something, no, we didn't. But no, we talked about maybe telling our 5-year-old cousin about that Appalachia rule. And then we remembered, oh no, he's a fart in a skillet. And if we tell him that, then he'll just use that to ignore all of us the entire trip.
Oh my God.
So we're like, you know what? We'll just, like, have him stick with someone so that he doesn't get got by an Appalachian cryptid.
Yeah, that is a good choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of cryptids, do you believe in cryptids?
I think stories are cool. I don't know. Maybe we'll explore some more ghost stories today, but
I feel like some cryptids are real. I don't think all of them are. Have you ever heard of the Van Meter Visitor?
No.
Oh my gosh. That one is one that we should totally look into. My sister is not convinced on the Van Meter Visitor being real, but she is very convinced about the Appalachians. Like, fair and valid, Appalachia has been there forever.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably some weird stuff up in those mountains.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Don't go out at night. Don't go out alone. And rule number 1, if you hear something, no, you didn't.
All right. Should we get into some other ghost stories?
Yes.
All right, so first, since we are doing the Christmas tradition of telling ghost stories, we're going to start with the ghost story you probably think of when you hear Christmas and ghost, A Christmas Carol. I always saw the Disney one with, like, the ducks, but, like, I know there's another movie.
There's ducks?
Like, there's a Donald Duck Christmas Carol.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I always saw the Muppet one.
There's a Muppet.
There's a Muppet
one. Okay, the Muppet one is good, yeah, but I also know I've also seen the other animated one.
Yeah, but where all of the girls from the Kermit and Miss Piggy relationship are pigs, like Miss Piggy, and all of the boys are frogs, like Kermit.
Genetics.
That's totally how genetic works. Unless, like, that's how, like, the Muppet...
I don't know.
Yeah.
Learn from Shrek. In the dragon in Donkey.
Okay, but they're like half donkey, half...
Learn from Shrek.
I mean, it could be like Muppets are like the Muppets of Kermit and Miss Piggy are like their own species, and all of the females are pigs and all of the males are frogs.
I don't know. I'm just not going to think too much about the Muppet genealogy. Yeah. Anyway, Christmas Carol. It was originally written by Charles Dickens in 1843 as a novella. And since then, the work got very, very popular. And you have probably seen a lot of different adaptations about it. So there are 4 ghosts in this story. There is the spirit of Jacob Marley, which is Ebenezer Scrooge's old co-worker who died.
Isn't he stuck in, like, purgatory or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's like, I think he was, like, a bad human being.
Yeah.
Like,
which is why he was stuck in purgatory.
Yep. And then there is the spirit of Christmas past, present, in the spirit of Christmas yet to come, or just the spirit of the future. And so all 4 of them visit Scrooge on Christmas Eve at different times.
I thought they visited him visited him over the course of 4 days.
No, Marley visits him and he's like, go away. And then he wakes up again and all 3 of them visit him. And they take him through different time periods. Yeah. So Marley had died 7 years before he reappears. And then tells him there's 3 spirits that will pay him a visit. And according to sources I found, it says, due to Marley's life of greed and selfishness, he found himself in a bad fate even in death. He tells Scrooge he has one chance to avoid the same fate by listening to the visiting ghosts. The ghost of Christmas past takes Scrooge into his childhood. Present shows him all the happy people at the market buying food for Christmas dinner, like in the moment. And then the ghost of Christmas yet to come shows him what his own grave looks like and how no one mourns him. And then, anyway,
we might delete that
so basically, yeah, okay. Guys, Scrooge becomes a better person at the end because of these ghosts. And Christmas ghosts happen because of the tradition of Christmas ghosts.
Slay.
But, okay.
All right, so on to some like personal ghost stories.
Yes. So have you had any ghost encounters?
Okay,
Sophia?
so at my elementary school, someone had the absolute genius idea to tell everyone. So at my elementary school, like in like the lobby area, there was a big star that we so very creatively called the star area. And it was rumored that the founders of the school, Mr. and Mrs. Windsor, were actually buried underneath the star. And it was like really creepy because they're like, there was photos of them above the office, which is like right like in the star area.
Yeah.
And I swear their eyes followed you. It was so creepy. Like it was terrifying.
That's crazy.
And like we were told this as like, I don't know, 2nd graders, 3rd graders.
Oh.
Yeah. Because like the 5th graders were obviously like, oh yeah, we got to scare the little kids. But yeah, no, that wasn't the creepiest part too. We also had like a shed like on the playground that was always locked. And like people swore like sometimes you would hear like banging and knocking.
Oh my God.
I think it was just the wind hitting the door. But like it was creepy. And like supposedly that's where the original school was built.
Oh.
So we're like, alrighty then. Okay.
Yeah.
So very creepy, very haunted. I know you kind of have a school.
Yes. So in the high school we went to, I was a theater kid and our auditorium hasn't actually been fully renovated since it was made. Like the stage is like over 100-year-old wood. Like it's the same wood that it was built with, supposedly. If you know anything about auditorium stages, it should be the stage and then there's like a music pit under it for like the orchestra and band. We don't have one though. We used to, but it's been filled in and you can see the line where like it was filled in. And there's a story behind it. The story is that there's a girl who went to the high school and she, like the ghost doesn't even like, I've never heard of it. So she's like unnamed, which is kind of scarier. But she fell into the pit and she died. And so then her parents made the school fill it in, but her soul got trapped in there because it was filled in. And so whenever anything happens, it's like because of her. So when props will go missing, it's like her, or when the set will like break and fall, like it's her and things like that.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure the actual story is she did fall in and she just like broke her leg. And then they were like, this is a safety hazard. But there's more safety hazards in that auditorium.
Yeah.
So, but that one's a fun one.
That one is a fun one. Kind of speaking of old buildings, my house is like over 100 years old.
Ooh.
And like growing up, so, well, little thing about my dad, he has always like buzzed his hair because, and this is him saying it, this isn't me being mean. And I quote, when he grows his hair out, he looks like a Q-tip. Because it grows out and not down. And no matter how long it grows out, it just continues to grow out, not down.
That's funny.
So he's like, yeah, I don't grow my hair out because I look like a Q-tip. Like, cool. Okay. Alrighty then. So he just buzzes it. Super easy for him. Like once a week, he'll just zzz. But that always made like the back of his head super recognizable because we're like, oh, buzzed head, that's dad.
Yeah.
And one time, so our washer and dryer is in our basement and like we have like, there's a little window, like not window, but there's like a little space where when you're going down the stairs, you can see our washer and dryer.
Okay.
So my sister was going down the stairs and we were like, I think she was like 10, and she supposedly saw her dad at the dryer and was like, oh, hey dad. Didn't respond. She went around the corner. No one was there.
Oh.
which is like creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, alrighty then. Okay. Alrighty then. And then she did have a friend who was like, oh yeah, your house is haunted. It has 2 ghosts, a guy ghost and a kid ghost, which is even creepier when a few years later, we completely renovated our house and we knocked like some walls, like we changed some walls and knocked them down. Inside the walls, we found a child's shoe.
No.
And some, like, a game and, like, a ruler, a stick. And we're like, cool, we just angered the spirits. Great. Alrighty then. It was like a leather shoe, too. So it was like an old kid's leather shoe.
Oh my god.
And my sister and I were like, put that shit back in the wall. Put it back. Put it back. And my parents are like, it's fine. It's fine. So we still have it because they're like, we aren't going to get rid of it because that would really anger the spirits. So now it's like in our garage, which is still on the property. But we looked it up. It was like a thing of luck. So a lot of times when cement is poured, they'll throw like a penny heads up in the cement. It's kind of like that. So when the walls were being made, they put in like the child's shoe and like a bouncy ball and the ruler and the stick. And so supposedly for good luck. But when we first saw it, that was creepy as hell. Like we're like, oh, you done messed up, Aaron. Like
that's crazy.
Yeah. So that was a little scary.
A little?
Honestly, it wasn't as scary as the ghost story my sister and I were told our summer camp one time. So we went to church camp growing up, and they didn't really want us like out and about at night because there weren't any bathrooms in the cabin. So we had to go to a separate bathhouse. Yeah. And they're like, you got to wake up your counselor. So then like you have like a chaperone with you. Cool, whatever. Well, in order to make sure that everyone did that, they told us the story of Jessica. So this camper, Jessica, one time she was a really bad camper. And one time she went out and she swam to this island in the middle of the lake. And she befriended this 50-foot leech and a killer loon. And like supposedly every night they come back to camp and find campers out of bed without their counselors and eat them.
Ooh.
Yeah. That was a little traumatizing for itty bitty Sophie. But it was really funny because now it's funny. I can laugh about it now. A lot of the older campers who knew that the entire story was just BS. Yeah. They would hide behind corners and then pop out and go, Jessica! And like we were scared of the name Jessica for a while.
Oh my god.
It was like we can laugh about it now because it's like, that's so dumb. And then at the end of the week, the counselor was like, so actually we made that whole thing up just to keep you in your cabins. And Jessica is actually one of the counselors. So there's nothing to worry about.
Oh my god.
Like, really? You freaked us out for a week for that.
That's funny. I have some stories about my camp I went to as well. We also have where we have like you have to take a buddy to the bathroom and tell the counselor.
Oh, okay.
But it's like we tell them about like because it's in a forest, so it's like there are raccoons, there are deer.
Yeah.
So you should be careful.
Yeah.
And I think they like it a little better because you only have to take like a buddy instead of a counselor.
Even at night?
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, if they want to take a counselor, they could like ask one of us to go with them. But like none of the bathrooms are like too far away. That's really unsafe. And it's like we know that they're there, so it's fine. They have to tell us when they leave and when they get back.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. But we don't have a ghost story, but we do have like a spirit story.
Ooh.
So we have this thing at the camp called a tadger. It's a cross between a tiger and a badger and maybe a bear.
Okay.
And basically it's this creature that's lived at camp since like the founding of it. And it lives in like the prairie, Newlands. And every full moon, you can find it. You can't find it any other time. It's out camp. You just can't find it.
Okay.
But it comes out of its hiding place on the full moon at night.
Okay.
And so we've gone on Tadger hunts before. And, like, the counselors will, like, pretend to be the Tadger and make noises and stuff at night. So that's a little fun. And there's little superstitions about the Tadger. If you leave your wet socks out on your cabin or tent porches, the Tadger will take them and eat them.
Oh.
And so if your shoes or, like, clothes are ever messed up around on, like, your porch, it's from the Tadger. If you, like, hear something, it's either the Tadger or, like, a raccoon. We also had a little, it wasn't a real coyote problem, but, like, there are coyotes out and about. And so we had one named Ricky.
Oh, wow.
And whenever anything happened, it was Ricky. It was like, you're hearing something, it's Ricky.
That's like in my sister's car, where we're just like, every time something weird happens, we're like, gosh darn it, Gerald. Like,
real.
Come on, Gerald. Gerald's our ghost. Whenever things get messed up, come on, Gerald. I made a Gerald one time, like, for my sister for Christmas a few years ago. He has, a square head, 2 ears, long arms, and then 3 legs.
That's
he's
fun.
red. So, yeah, and then my dog ate him. Yeah, R.I.P. Gerald. Your Tadger story, like, with, like, the counselors, like, making the Tadger noises, it kind of reminds me of one time when my uncle just completely messed with some of my cousins, as well as their dad. So we have a camp and, like, a cabin in Canada, like, family camp, family cabin, both in the middle of nowhere, like, literally no cell service. It's a great getaway. It is a great getaway. I love it so much. But every few years we do what we call cousins camp. And so we, like, all get together, and that's, like, our big family reunion.
Yeah.
So there was one time where my uncle decided, you know what? Everyone's sleeping too peacefully. Let's go mess with some people. And so he went on the outside of one of the cabins, because usually everyone sleeps in the lodge, but my cousins and their dad were like, you know what? No, we're going to sleep in our own cabin, which they're basically just a square room with bunk beds.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, no, we're going to sleep in our own cabin. So my uncle went out and would just start scratching on the outside of the cabin and, like, making, like, noises. Like, well, I'll preface this. Before that, we were kind of telling ghost stories, and he was like, yeah, like, the pine bugs will get you. Which, like, that's an actual thing. Like, pine beetles, they take chunks. They're scary, but you can always hear them because they click. But he was like, yeah, no, they'll get you, and they come at night. And, like, there's also bears around. So it's like, when you hear noises outside, you're like, is it a bear? Is it a cryptid? Is it a, like, are we gonna die? Like, are we good? Usually it is the wind and a branch rustling. But he went out and he was, like, scratching on their door every so often, kind of making knocking noises. And then inside he would hear, ah, Dad, what is that? What is that? Boys, go back to bed. It's fine. We're all fine. It's okay. It's nothing. And then he'd be quiet for a little bit. And then he'd do it again. And he did that, like, 5 times before he was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed now. And so we wake up, and the next morning we did, like, a whole, like, pancake breakfast. And they were telling the story. And my cousin's dad was like, yeah, and I just told him, go back to bed, guys. Like, it's not a big deal. And, like, even though he was, like, terrified before. And so it took a couple years before my uncle ended up fessing up and was like, oh yeah, guys, I was just screwing with you. Like, there was nothing out there. I was completely just messing with you. So yeah, that's one that I laugh about all the time.
That's funny. All right. So I have a few just famous ghost stories to share after our personal ones. So the first one is Bloody Mary. So you guys are probably like, Maya, that's a drink. No, it is a ghost.
It's a drink too.
It is a drink too, but, like, it's ghost. So the story goes, like, if you mutter Bloody Mary into a mirror in a darkened room, like, that's, like, the whole superstition. But It's based on the act of divination using a mirror called catopromancy. I think is how you say it. So, going back a little bit, in ancient Greece, sick people would visit temples and then look at a mirror. And if a healthy-looking apparition stared back at them, they would get better. And if the apparition was sick or like terrifying, then they would like die.
That kind of reminds me of like the Velisca thing, like how they're like no mirrors
and windows. Go and listen to that episode, guys.
Yes.
Moving forward in history, Edwardian Britain, young women would look for visions of their future husbands in candlelit mirrors. So if he appeared, it would be good and they'd get married. But if like a ghost or scary thing would appear, it was divined that she would die before she married. Mm-hmm. And then similar to Bloody Mary, there's a Japanese legend of Hanako, who is a young girl who was killed during World War II or by parent or stranger, who appears in the mirrors of school bathrooms if you shout her name, I think 3 times.
Okay, kind of like Bloody Mary.
Yeah. So you can summon Bloody Mary by like saying her name into a mirror, and she's supposed to like appear as like a blood-soaked spirit. And she is based off of possibly Mary the First of England.
Which, if you don't know, that is Henry VIII's first daughter. Very Catholic. She reinstated the Catholic Church.
So she was the first queen to rule in her own right rather than as a wife of a king, which is pretty cool. And as Sophia said, she was really famous for being very Catholic, which earned her the nickname Bloody Mary. And because she had at least 280 people burned at the stake for resisting her Catholicization of England. Okay. So these purges were known as Marian persecutions and were aimed at Protestants.
Okay.
So she executed them and burned them. And then she had a famous victim, Thomas Cranmer.
Cromwell?
No, Cranmer. The Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh.
So after his trial, he renounced his faith and re-embraced Catholicism, but Mary didn't like him, and he was responsible for annulling Henry's marriage to Mary's mother.
Oh, so she had a little bit of a grudge.
Yep. And so she was like, I don't care, and burned him anyway. Which, queen for that, which she was.
Yeah.
So people were like, this is kind of crazy, and people were kind of upset at her for this, even like Catholic supporters.
Oh, okay.
And then her successor became Protestant. So it was kind of just a blip of bloody persecution against Protestants. That's kind of fun.
Her successor being Queen Elizabeth I.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't say that. So she was also betrothed at the age of 2 and married multiple people, but she never gave birth. But this is interesting. At 37, she apparently became pregnant, displayed all symptoms, but then never gave birth.
Oh.
Medical experts now, according to this source, suggest she may have suffered from pseudocysis, a condition that essentially ghosts a pregnancy by producing all the symptoms.
Oh.
And then she fell pregnant again, but then died aged 42 during a flu epidemic.
So she died when she was pregnant?
Yeah, but she actually died from ovarian cysts or cancer, not the flu. Another possible Bloody Mary is Mary, Queen of Scots, who was the daughter of King James V. Guise. How do you say? So, okay, she was married to her cousin. Ew! And then
we have more about that in the Habsburgs episode. Don't date your cousins, folks.
She killed him, I think. So her husband killed Mary's Catholic secretary, stabbing him 56 times.
Wait, is that the one that she was having an affair with?
Probably. And she was pregnant and had to watch it.
Damn.
But then her husband was murdered in a mysterious circumstance later, I think, that year. And Mary's believed to have been involved, and then most likely because she went on to marry one of the main suspects of his murder.
Mm-hmm.
But then her marriage to that guy, James Hepburn, was even worse than her former husband. He abducted her and then held her prisoner in Dunbar Castle, and then tried to lay claim to kingship, but then never got the support for it. He was arrested. She was forced to abdicate her throne to her child's son, and then raised an army to take back power, but that didn't work. Then she fled to England, seeking sanctuary with her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, who then instead had her imprisoned for 18 years. And the Catholics liked her, though, because Elizabeth was Protestant. And then letters were found implicating Mary in a plot to overthrow Elizabeth, and then she was tried for treason and sentenced to death. And so, at 44 years old, she was beheaded. But she was very dignified, apparently, when she was beheaded. So that's kind of fun. So she died. So that's a really interesting one, and I think it's cool that there's some historical background to who it may be based off of, especially in your thing. I think is interesting. But we have another story really quick. The story of the Bell Witch. Bell Witch centers on the John Bell family of Tennessee and the spiritual haunting that they endured 1817 to 1821. So this is like a very realistic haunting that there's like historical evidence of it happening, which is really interesting. And there are things now that haven't been able to be scientifically proven, which I think is cool.
It's also in Appalachia.
Mm-hmm.
So Appalachia's spooky, y'all.
Mm-hmm. So basically, John Bell moved his family from North Carolina to Tennessee and then built their house. And there is a rumor that it was built on a Native American burial site, and that's one of the reasons why they got haunted, but not one of the main suspects. Basically, they bought land, built a house, then got more land. So they acquired more land, and they did have a plantation on their land, I believe. But his wife, her name was Lucy Bell, and they had, I think, 4 children total. Their daughter was named Betsy, and she's a very important part of the story. So basically, it all started in 1817. John was inspecting his cornfield, shout out to corn, when he encountered a strange-looking animal sitting in the field. He was shocked by the appearance of this animal, which supposedly had the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. Bell shot at it, but the animal vanished and was not seen again. And so he thought nothing more of the incident until dinner, where the family heard beating sounds on the outside walls of their home. The mysterious sounds continued with increased frequency and force every night. And him and his sons would often hurry outside to try to catch a culprit, but always returned empty-handed. And in the weeks that followed, the children began waking up, complaining that rats were gnawing at their bedposts. And then they had their bed covers pulled from them, pillows tossed to the floor by a somewhat invisible force. So it was originally just kind of like little things like this, but then it began to turn very violent. They started hearing whispering voices, which were too weak to be understood, but sounded like an old woman singing hymns, apparently. And then Betsy Bell, the daughter, began experiencing very, very violent encounters with the ghost, who would pull her hair and slap her, leaving welts and handprints on her face and body. So originally, the father swore the family to secrecy, but then eventually told his close friends because it got worse. And then his friends stayed the night at their house, and then they were subject to terrifying disturbances, as well as bed covers being yanked and the pillows being thrown everywhere, things like that. It eventually became very loud, and the voice was unmistakable. It would sing hymns, quote scripture, and also carry on conversations. It would speak to the people, and actually apparently was very nice to the wife, Lucy Bell, and once left fruit for her when she was sick. So that's kind of cute.
Silly ghosts.
And then we have a little shout out to Andrew Jackson, president. So he actually came supposedly to the Bell house to investigate before he became president. And he thought like he had an encounter with the ghost as well, which is kind of crazy. A big thing for this ghost was that she didn't like John Bell at all. She hated him. And she also didn't like the fact that Betsy was engaged to a man named Joshua. And the ghost would like be mean to Betsy and Joshua when they were together and like hurt them physically. And it got so bad that Betsy broke off her engagement with Joshua. But the entity still continued to dislike John Bell and would vow to kill him. And he experienced episodes of twitching in his face and difficulty swallowing for almost a year. And then it grew worse and worse with time. And then his declining health confined him to the house, where the entity would do things like removing his shoes when he tried to walk or slap him when he recovered from his seizures. And she would call him Old Jack Bell. And he died after being into a coma one day. And then after his death, his family found a vial of black liquid in the cupboard. And then his son sprinkled it on their cat's tongue, which immediately killed the cat. And so they threw it into the fire, which then exploded into blue flame. And then the ghost apparently exclaimed, "I gave Jack a big dose of that last night, which fixed him," which is kind of crazy. And his funeral was actually a very big funeral, which is interesting. And as I mentioned earlier, Betsy and Joshua stopped their engagement. And an interesting thing is Betsy's former school teacher was like madly in love with her and was really upset when he found out she was engaged to Joshua. And he married her after she ended her engagement with Joshua. And this is after the ghost stopped tormenting Betsy, which is kind of crazy. So after Betsy broke off her engagement and John Bell died, the entity visited Lucy Bell, the wife, because she really liked her, and said she would leave but return in 7 years. And then she did, and she visited John Bell's son, who apparently spoke of the future to him and like predicted the Civil War, which wouldn't happen for another 30 years. And then after 3 weeks, she left again and promised to visit again in 107 years, which would be in 1935. But no one, she wasn't seen during that time. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. So there's that story, and there's just a lot of interesting things that happen. Like people, they had visitors. The Bell family would have visitors coming over, and they would hear her, which is kind of crazy. And there's a theory that her ghost was a woman named Kate, who was their neighbor, Kate Batts, who was an eccentric neighbor who was known for making up stories for attention, but she was dead at this point. Oh. So it's theorized that it might be her ghost because she would respond to the name Kate, which is interesting. Huh. Yeah, so that's a really popular American ghost story.
Yeah, interesting. I don't think I've heard that one before. Mm-hmm. So that's it for ghost stories for now. Yep. Join us next time as we delve into the history of Christmas cards,
especially the morbid history behind Christmas cards.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. As always, all sources will be listed in the show notes below.
Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on our upcoming discussions. Join us next week as we delve into the intriguing depths of our grim past.
Stay curious. There's so much more to uncover.